that will voluntarily purchase that kind of insurance are the people that are most likely to use it, and that's not a good business model for the insurance agency. So in 1968, Congress passed the National Flood Insurance Act, allowed the federal government to sell flood insurance, and there's a lot of misunderstanding that the insurance is subsidized. The insurance is not subsidized by the taxpayer. There are cross-subsidies within the program itself. But as a result of those cross-subsidies and the inability of FEMA to price insurance in accordance with risk, and the fact that our damages keep going up, the fund is very deep in the hole. So that's led to a lot of changes. But getting back to the local community responsibility, in order to participate in the program and allow flood insurance to be sold within your community, you agree to adopt a flood map that FEMA provides, and there are relatively new flood maps in Dutchess County were recently adopted. And you agree to manage development within the areas shown as flood hazard areas on those maps. And by managing development, it means that if somebody is going to develop within those floodplains, they have to meet certain standards. Now, if a local community fails to do that, fails to adopt the map, fails to enforce its standards, or simply does not join the program, then flood insurance cannot be sold within that community. And when I say community, I mean a town, city, or village in New York. So flood insurance cannot be sold within that community, and that essentially means that people are going to have a very difficult time obtaining a mortgage for any structure in the floodplain. Federal law requires a flood insurance policy as a condition of a mortgage for any structure that is within a FEMA mapped flood hazard area. So without the ability to get flood insurance, the banks are not going to offer a loan. The other stick is that if a community fails to participate in the program, certain types of federal disaster assistance become unavailable within that community, specifically any assistance to either private or publicly owned structures. And when I say structure, I'm talking about a walled and roofed building. I'm not talking about a bridge or a culvert. So without being in the program, you would not be eligible for federal individual assistance, public assistance for publicly owned buildings, individual assistance for privately owned buildings in the event of a federal disaster declaration. So that's a big stick, but it's also a big carrot. And as a result, out of about 1,500 eligible municipalities in New York State, all but about 8 of them participate in the program. But I also often say to people, well, 99% of them participate in the program. About 50% of them know that they participate in the program. For a lot of communities, you passed a local law back in the 1980s. You're a few generations removed from that in terms of local employees, in terms of supervisors and mayors. And if you don't have a flood, or if you don't hear from us or hear from a disgruntled constituent, you may not be that aware that you're in the program. However, in 2004, the state building code incorporated most of the standards that FEMA has in the National Flood Insurance Program. So just by enforcing your building code properly, you're enforcing most of what the program requires. Not all of it, but most of it. In 2007, the state building code was amended to require new or substantially improved or substantially damaged residential structures to have the lowest floor not built